Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It won't be an easy fight to get meaningful spending reforms when even some Republicans, some good Republicans, are lukewarm about serious spending cuts. Look at what happened with the negotiations over this year's budget. Republicans promised $100 billion in cuts and ended up negotiating for and accepting a $38 billion cut with Democrats that the Congressional Budget Office says actually reduces the deficit by less than $500 million. So our next guest did, in fact, back that agreement. What's his path towards fiscal sanity look like now that the ball did not get moved in the last negotiation? With us now is New York Republican Congressman and Freedom Watch regular, since his district is so close to where we now are, Michael Grimm. Congressman Grimm, welcome here.
Nice to see you, Judge.
Have you decided once and for all to vote against raising the debt ceiling?
Judge, my position hasn't changed at all.
What is your position?
My position is very clear.
We teased each other on this because I think there's a little too much wiggle room. My job's to pin you down.
Okay, fair enough. Let me be very clear.
Go ahead.
There is no question that raising the debt limit without doing anything else is just kicking the can down the road for a crisis. There's a looming debt crisis that is coming. Whether we like it or not, it's there. We are so laden with debt that the S&P even has downgraded. They haven't downgraded us yet, but has given us an unfavorable outlook.
Right.
So there's no question it's coming. That being said, and I've said this from the beginning, I can only raise the debt limit in good conscience if we have serious, real spending cuts now and systemic reforms, whatever those systemic reforms may be, such as spending caps and so on, that can guarantee that we are curbing this debt and getting it down and under control. And I don't think we can do that overnight.
All right, but do you trust this president or any future president who promises to spend less? Isn't only the legal inability to borrow the only tool that will keep the government from getting us deeper into debt? If President Obama says, give me this $2.5 trillion that I want to borrow, and I promise to spend it at a slower rate than I've been spending it in the past, that's still going to put us $2.7 trillion deeper into debt.
Well, that's why I said we need protocols and procedures in place, such as spending caps, to curb the president's appetite for spending. But let me ask you a question, Judge, in all sincerity. We can go on and on about rhetoric, but if your children spent on credit cards, if they were away at college and spent a ton of money on their credit cards that they weren't supposed to spend, do you simply say, I'm not paying the bill? Or do you cut the credit cards? That's what this discussion needs to be about. We're adults, and we have to handle this like adults. We have to cut the credit cards and stop the spending. But that doesn't mean we don't pay the bills and obligations that the United States has already undertaken.
I don't think anybody is suggesting that we should default on our debt. And one of your colleagues, Senator Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, an economist before he was in the Congress, wrote a lengthy piece in the Wall Street Journal demonstrating how, on the $250 billion the government collects in income taxes, we can pay the debt. And some of your colleagues, Congressman Tom McClintock from California, has introduced legislation that would require the Treasury to pay the debt first so that we don't default. Question, Congressman Grimm, why can't the government live within its means? Why can't the president just take the $250 billion a month and spend it without borrowing more?
Very simple, because the entitlement side of the equation is tremendous and growing rapidly. Yes, we could pay the debt, but then that means we couldn't pay seniors their Social Security check, couldn't pay for Medicare, and we couldn't pay for Medicaid. The reality is people that are indigent and so on, that rely on the government for certain medical care and other needs, are not just going to go away.
It sounds like we're in an impossible bind. It sounds like we have made so many commitments to spend so much money that we don't have, that we'll be borrowing forever until there's a crisis or a revolution, whichever happens first.
But that's why, and I'm not saying Paul Ryan's budget is perfect. What it is a starting. It's a step in the right direction to start the discussion. The reality is these entitlement programs, if we don't change the formulas now for our future generations, then they're not going to be there.
Republicans, many of whom agree with you, they are fiscal conservatives,
yes,
control the House of Representatives. They couldn't even get a measly $100 billion cut in the budget for this year. How can we trust the Republicans to do any meaningful cuts?
Judge, with all due respect, do we have control of the Senate? Do we have control of the presidency? No, we do not. We're one leg of a three-legged stool. So if you think there's not going to be any compromise if we want to get anything done at all, then we're kidding ourselves.
Is the debt ceiling going to go up?
I believe that we're going to take a firm stand, and if we don't get any cuts, if we don't get real systemic reform, then no, I believe the Republicans hold their ground, and I'll be one of them.
You are a good guy to come here and do this with me. You're always welcome in the studio.
Thank you, Judge.
Congressman Michael Grimm from Staten Island, New York. It's a pleasure. You'd think the president would have learned a lesson on the